What is up? Welcome to the NFL Rundown, brought to you courtesy of Run Pure Sports and Run Pure Bets. I'm your host, Spread Astaire, back today with Tyler Hicks and the man behind the camera, Mr. Jeff Nadu, Philly's own, big Eagles fan. Jeff, so happy that you're able to join us today and break down some NFC East football.
I appreciate you guys having me. It's always good to see you, Spread. You, Tyler. I've worked with you guys many years ago, and it's nice to catch up with you again and talk a little NFL football and get ready for the season. I mean, we had the Hall of Fame game last night, and football's in the air. We're about a month away.
Yeah, pretty excited about it. Tyler, any overall breakdowns of the NFC East before we get started team by team?
No, I mean, it's a division where we get a new winner every year because the last time a team's won back-to-back years was 0-1 to 0-4 when Philly did it. So, I mean, it's always a fun division to cap, and what better way to do it than one of the biggest Eagles fans in the world, Jeff Nadu. So, should be a fun breakdown.
All right, well, let's dive right in. The first team we're going to talk about is the Dallas Cowboys. I'm using Bet Online right now. Their win total set at 10 right now, minus 115 each way. So not a lot of juice whichever way you're going. Interesting offseason for the Cowboys. If you guys have watched the show, you know I'm not a big fan of their head coach, Mike McCarthy, but you can't doubt Dak Prescott and his ability. He's really shown, he's proven year after year. He puts up the numbers, good performances. They have the weird backfield issue where it seems like Tony Pollard is the better back, but Ezekiel Elliott makes all the money. And then, of course, on the offensive side of the ball, the loss of Amari Cooper and with Michael Gallup out, that's going to be interesting to see if they're able to absorb that loss or if the offense takes a hit. What do you think, Jeff?
Yes, I mean, anytime I talk about the Cowboys, I preface this with saying that, over the years, I always liked Tony Romo. I like Dak Prescott a lot. I think this team has major question marks, though, coming into the season. I mean, you talked about it right at the start. I mean, Mike McCarthy's not a guy that I really want to put much solace in. You look at the roster. Okay, we can't say that the roster in December of last year is as good as the roster this year. It just isn't. I mean, you lose Amari Cooper, as you alluded to, Gallup's on the PUP list to start the season. I know they like Jalen Tolbert. I like Jalen Tolbert coming out of college at South Alabama. I thought he was a great player. Whether he can take the next step at the NFL level, I don't know. We have to remember as well, at one point several years ago, this was one of the better offensive lines in football. Now, all of a sudden, they're not. They were in the middle last year as far as sacks allowed per game, but I think that's a point of contention. As you alluded to, they don't really know who the starting running back is, even though they have some talent there. I think defensively is what I've been impressed with this group most. Dan Quinn really came in and did a nice job last year, I thought. This defense 2-3 years ago was a dumpster fire. I mean, they were absolutely horrific. I still think they have question marks with guys like Micah Parsons, who I think is a great player, but I don't know if he sometimes knows what exactly he is supposed to play. He was the, defensive player of the year, defensive rookie of the year, but sometimes I see him in weird situations. I think he's the anchor of that defense. I like Trayvon Diggs, but it's hard to say that I think this team should be the favorite in this division. I don't look at their roster and think it's as talented as another team, and I think they definitely took some on the chest last year after losing certain guys coming into the season. The roster's not as good to me.
Yeah, I mean, most of the teams feel like they're getting better, season to season. I know, right? I'm a Raiders fan. Everyone's real excited about the offseason additions we made. And when we get to your team, the Eagles, they're going to feel the same way. I don't know what the Cowboys really have to hang their hat on to say like, oh, well, we lost in the wild card round, but, we added this guy or we fixed this leak. Seems like they're coming back pretty status quo. Maybe a little down a little now. Of course, I have my own feelings about Amari Cooper from being on the Raiders, but you can't doubt that he's a great route runner, and you can't doubt that he gets the other guys open because he does demand attention. So that's going to be interesting. Micah Parsons, you talked about, boy, he might need to just rush every down. I don't understand why you got a guy like that who can beat any one-on-one matchup, it feels like, and you got him dropping into coverage. Maybe being a little too smart for the room. Tyler, what do you think of this Dallas team? Their win total set at 10. Seems about right to me. Because we're going to talk about the rest of this division, and they should have some nice division games here. But would you go over or under this number, Tyler? And what do you think of the Cowboys?
I'm going under this division or under this win on this division team spread because they went 12-5 last year. But you look at their schedule from last year, they played 6 playoff teams. The only teams they beat were they swept the Eagles, which you kind of can't count that second game because the Eagles were playing their backups and Dallas just thromped them. And they beat New England in an overtime game. Outside of that, they beat all bad teams. So that record was inflated. Just like Jeff said, they really made no adjustments to this roster. And they draft one wide receiver to replace Cooper. Gallup's hurt. They also lose Randy Gregory on the defensive side. That takes away some of that pass rush. And you look at their schedule now this year, they start with 2 home games, Tampa Bay, Cincinnati. I think they're 0-2 out of the gate. Then they go Giants, Washington. Maybe they get to 2-2. But then Rams, Philly, they're right back to 2-4. And I think they might be looking at 4-4 going into the bye week, unless Detroit is good like a lot of us think. And maybe they're sitting at 3-4. But then after that, they have a stretch where they could lose multiple games. Green Bay, Minnesota, the Giants, Indianapolis, Houston, Jacksonville, Philly, Tennessee, Washington. I'm thinking they win 8 to 9 games, so they kind of get you close to that 10. And if Mike McCarthy has a couple moments where he loses you some games late, they could definitely stay under that number. But I heard our guy Whale talking on their podcast yesterday. Stage of elimination for Dallas. Mm-hmm. Wild card round plus 225. You're telling me they don't sneak into the playoffs maybe as like the 7th seed and just get thromped by like a Green Bay, a Tampa Bay, or a Rams? I think that's worth a shot. And I would also play them just to miss the playoffs outright at plus 205. I think there's a possibility there too.
I think they're a 9-8 team. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they have these shiny toys every year in, the Dak Prescotts or the Michael Gallups or whoever's. But, the truth of the matter is, as I said, they are not strong in the offensive line anymore. They're decent. They're not great. And you look at the defensive line. This is not ever a defensive line that we go, oh, my God, they're great defensively. You look at the latest 2 seasons from a sacks per game standpoint. In 2020, 1.9 sacks per game. If that was last year, that would be bottom 5 in football. Last season, they were 16th in sacks per game, 2.3. So they were a bit better, but they were still below average, basically. So you win in the trenches in the NFL and in college football, and if you don't have them at high levels, you will not win. And to compare, to me, the Philadelphia Eagles with them, I don't think it's a comparison, quite frankly.
Yeah, well, let's jump right in. And, that was the main reason when we were choosing divisions. We said we want Jeff to come on and talk about the NFC East, because it's not just Philadelphia. It's nationwide that people are high on this team. You can argue that they had the best draft. You can, I think it's either them or the Jets. I mean, and of course we never know until we see these guys on the field, but it just looks like they did a great job of addressing their weaknesses. And one thing they did was they said, you know what, we keep missing on these wide receiver draft picks. Why don't we just trade for a guy that we know is good? Because for whatever reason, we're not evaluating this position correctly coming out of school. And I'll be honest, I think wide receiver is a very tough position. I think that linemen and defensive linemen are kind of easier to gauge from college to pros. I mean, I thought, a guy like Keneal Harry, I might be saying it wrong, but the guy at ASU, I thought he was going to be so good. Oh, he goes to a great situation in New England. Just turns out to be nothing. It's so hard to tell with these guys, but give credit to Philadelphia Eagles for realizing, hey, this is a weakness. We need an established guy. So talk to us about the mood around Philly and what are your expectations for this team?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was a tale of 2 seasons for the Eagles. I mean, at one point they were I think 4-6 or 3-6. Yeah, it wasn't good. They were getting blown out. They weren't running the football at all. And then, Nick Sirianni says, you know what? I'm going to start running the football. They were the best run offense in the league, and they finished 6-3. And really saved, I think, his position, because there were people calling for his job in the first 3, 4, 5 weeks of the season. I remember they got blown out by the Kansas City Chiefs in Philadelphia, a game in which at one point they were within 3 points, I believe, and then they just got slaughtered in the second half. But, yeah, look, you talk about a team that was not good enough on the defensive line this year. While they had a good run defense, they didn't get to the quarterback. That's been a point of contention in this town for a long time. How do you get to the quarterback? It's important, though, to remember, didn't have Brandon Graham. He's back for 1 or 2 more years now. He'll probably retire in the next year or two, but you still have him involved. Getting Jordan Davis, while I think addresses the pass rush problem, what it's going to do is it's going to assert a double team, and it's going to allow the pass rushers that are there to get to the quarterback. He's a massive individual, and he makes way to basically grab double teams to take away from others. I think that'll free people like Javon Hargrave, Derek Barnett, Brandon Graham, all these guys up, Josh Sweat. And that's going to be something that's going to make this rush offense and pass sack defense get better as well. The linebacker group went from being, to me, the worst in football to one of the best. Kazir White is severely underrated, great tackler. They drafted Nakobe Dean and got him in the 3rd round, and got Hassan Reddick, a Philly guy who was at Temple. He comes in from Carolina. That's a huge get. And then their secondary. We wondered, would they make a cornerback move? And as you said, if you can't find it in the draft, you go out and address it in free agency. They had one of the best off seasons I've seen them have. And I am not someone that's going to give that weasel Howie Roseman much carte blanche, but he's been good this season. They went out and addressed it. They went out and got guys that I think come in and contribute. Guys like Jaquiski Tart, James Bradbury. These are guys that are going to help this team considerably. I haven't even gotten to the skill positions in offensive line. I think they have the best offensive line in football, completely healthy. They have some depth there as well. And as you alluded to, Spread, if you can't find a receiver in the NFL draft, you have one in Devontae Smith. You got to go out and get the other. I think A.J. Brown flies here in Philadelphia. If I can't use a pun, I will use a pun. A.J. Brown, I think, will fly here. And I think that will lead to just Jalen Hurts being the guy that we think he can be. It's all going to come down to him, though. Okay, and that's the big question about a lot of teams. It's going to come down to will Trey Lance be the next guy? Will Kyler Murray make that superstar leap? Will Dak Prescott do it as well? There's a lot of question marks with a lot of these NFC teams. We'll see if Jalen Hurts can do it. He really has no excuse with all the weapons and offensive line he has.
I mean, Jeff did all the additions. Great, Tyler. But at the very end, that's basically what I'm going to throw to you. They put a 52-man roster. The other 52 seem good to go. Great job. Is Jalen Hurts the guy? Can he get it done? And what do you expect from him this season? Because, boy, they've really put everything on the table for him to succeed here. Now it's really up to him to prove that he belongs. What do you think about this Philadelphia Eagles team, and how do you expect Jalen Hurts to perform this season?
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Jalen Hurts fan. I always thought he was more like the run-first quarterback. The first time I seen him in Alabama, I was like, I don't really think this guy translates to the next level, but he's here. He's a starter. And what the kid does is he knows how to win games. Now you put this roster around him, and just like Jeff said, that offensive line is stacked. If they're not first, they're definitely top 3. There's no doubt about that. The only thing that could ruin that is injuries. And that's what kind of happened to them last year. They were ravaged by injuries, and they still got to the wild card. Now everyone's going to be like, oh, they got smashed by Tampa. But what first quarterback to play his first playoff game against the defending champs and Tom Brady's on the other side, who's going to do good in that situation? Not a lot of guys. So I kind of take that game with a grain of salt. But then you look at their schedule this year, Spread. It is easy as it gets. This team could easily be the 1 seed in the NFC, I think. If Tampa Bay slips up a little bit and the Rams lose a couple games they shouldn't, I mean, Philly comes out of the gate at Detroit. Yeah, they could have an upset spot there, but then they go to Minnesota in a night game. We all know Kirk Cousins can only play in that 1 p.m. time slot. So they're at least 1-1, 2-0 going into week 3. Then Washington, Jacksonville, Arizona, Dallas before the bye. I think there's a possibility they're 6-0 going into the bye. Worst case scenario, 4-2. Come out of the bye at home versus Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh never travels well to Philly. They'll beat them. At Houston versus Washington. At the Colts versus Green Bay versus Tennessee versus the Giants. Chicago, Dallas, New Orleans, and the Giants. I think there's a very good possibility this team wins 12 games if they stay healthy. I think they sweep Dallas. Maybe they lose that New Orleans game late in the year. And then the Green Bay game. And that's pretty much it. So, go ahead.
It's funny you mentioned injury because the most glaring injury they had during that Super Bowl year was the only one they really had, Carson Wentz.
Yep.
And that ended up leading the way for Nick Foles, who you never know. You never know how things go. Maybe Nick Foles, maybe Carson's the quarterback and they don't win the Super Bowl. Who knows? But I think that's one thing, interestingly enough, knock on wood, about this training camp. There was a blog written on one of the blogs around here about how we haven't heard any juice coming out of the Eagles training camp. And the article was basically talking about how, as a fan, you want your training camp to be boring, because what that means is there's no position battles. Everybody's cemented in their position. There's, knock on wood, no injuries. Everyone's doing what they need to do. And that's something I'm hearing around here. There's not a lot of talk coming out of camp. Everyone's kind of doing what they do. There's been nothing major to really get into. And that's what I want. I find what you say to be kind of fascinating, because I think sometimes people think with us here that, we're just over, as far as we think our teams are a lot better than they are. But I truly believe, I think when you look past, let's just say, the Rams or the Bucks, I think you can make a strong case on paper that the Eagles are right up there as the third or fourth best team. And I guess paper is not going to pay the bills or win Super Bowls, but it's nice to hear people kind of nationally, whether it's on the West Coast or where you are, I believe you're in Pittsburgh, hearing stuff like that is definitely exciting.
Jeff, what's the attitude of the fans towards Jalen Hurts? We broke it down from a bettor's perspective, and we're not necessarily sure what to make of him, but he's definitely, set up to have a big year. How do the fans feel, just from a football fan perspective? Is everybody all in on this guy, or are there some doubts still?
Well, the interesting thing about this fan base is there's still a lot of individuals that go to these games every week that are still, those old school 700 level people that as soon as Jalen Hurts throws 2 or 3 incompletions, you're going to start hearing boos. So I don't put a lot of context in what they think. I remember when Carson Wentz was injured, there would be guys calling in that they should bring Colin Kaepernick off the trash heap and bring him back, and all sorts of wild things. So I don't put much stock into the fans. Now, the younger fans, the fans that have a little common sense, I think everyone here believes Jalen Hurts is the guy. We've seen flashes with him. He has the ability now. He's worked in the offseason with important people. He's got, A.J. Brown's a close friend of his. He has, I think, the complementary pieces that he needs. He's in the right situation to do well. I think it goes a long way wherever you work. If you have a team around you that you're excited to be with, you're excited to work with, and they give you a lot of help, that's important. If you're not supported, which I can't lie, the quarterbacks in this town over the years have not exactly been supported. I remember when Donovan McNabb was here. For a long time, the issue was he was never given the right weapons. They give him a weapon in 2004, and they go to the Super Bowl. Carson Wentz had that problem here, but Jalen can't really make that excuse anymore. So I think most of the fans, 80% of them, are quite happy and quite excited. We'll see if Jalen's either the guy or not.
One thing that I've read about Jalen, and this is the opposite of Carson Wentz, is that he's really well liked in the locker room. He has a great work ethic, and that he's the type of guy, right? You don't mind paying a guy like that when they do everything right, and we're not talking the NFC West today, right? But he's almost like the anti-Kyler to me, where he's making the most of his ability. He's working hard, and everybody likes him. Now, Carson Wentz is on his third team, and we're already hearing rumors that he's not well liked in the locker room again, right? So at that point, right, you got to think it's probably something about Wentz, not just that particular thing. So I'm pretty excited to see how Jalen Hurts does this year. And just from like a neutrals fan perspective, how can you not root for the guy, right? Great attitude, and everything I've seen of him off the field is just something, someone that you'd look up to and emulate. And, if you have kids, that he's someone that you'd want them to emulate. So I'm real excited for the Eagles this year.
Yeah, he comes from a football family, and his father was a football coach. His father was integral in his career. He's a charismatic kid. He says all the right things. He has that strong ability to lead, which, you don't want your quarterback to be too divish, but you also don't want to be a complete pushover
Right.
where they're not going to speak their mind. They're going to say some things that maybe they shouldn't, but you respect it. He's just a guy that does all the right things. And look, as a polished kid, I think he's a terrific individual. He seems like a nice kid, seems like a driven individual. And, it seems all perfect. But in the end, it's going to come down to his ability. I'm excited about what it could be. And look, I think they kind of think, if he's not the guy, well, we're not going to be good anyway, and we'll just go out and get a guy next year. But he's about the only concern you'd have going into the season.
Yeah, and so I can't wait to
just
see how
for fun while we're here. Spread.
What's up?
They all three were on the same roster at one point. Who we all taken out of the 3 Alabama quarterbacks in the NFL now? Hurts, Jones, Tua?
That's a good question. Well, for me, I think two of them are still hard to figure out. I mean, I think Mac Jones is pretty damn good. I will say, someone asked me this question: would I rather have Mac Jones or Jalen Hurts? I would rank Mac Jones 1, Hurts 2, Tua 3. But I think they could all be very good quarterbacks, especially with the weapons they have with Tyreek Hill for Tua and. Mac's just kind of talented, and then Jalen now. So I think they all will be good quarterbacks. But I would take Mac Jones over any of the two, and it's a 3.
Since we're going on a quick sidebar, Jeff, how do you think that New England's going to do without Josh McDaniels as OC? Do you think that's going to hurt them at all, or they just keep rolling?
Well, that's a great question because we don't really know. I mean,
yeah.
As far as I know, he's been the offensive coordinator for years there.
The only time is that one little stint in Denver, right, when he had Tebow. That's the only time he wasn't there.
Right. They
took us out in the playoffs that year, spread.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. The Steelers, right. I don't really know. That's the big question. I mean, it's kind of a weird situation because I don't know if people are realizing that Matt Patricia is the offensive coordinator. I think we kind of look at it. Wasn't he the defensive coordinator?
Yeah.
And I remember the Eagles did it one time with Juan Castillo. He was their offensive line coach. And then all of a sudden they decided, let's put him as defensive coordinator. And it was just a weird thing. And
it didn't work out, if I remember.
No, it did not work out. We'll see. Matt Patricia seems to be only good, though, when he's with Bill, which is interesting. I don't know. I don't know what they'll be. I'm going to say that's going to hurt them a little bit. But, look, are they the Bills? No. Do I think they make the playoffs? I think they could. But I'm not running to back them, put it that way.
All right. Right now, hopefully you can find a better number. I'm looking at Bet Online. The Eagles over 9.5 is -150. And you got to like that. I mean, the way that we've been talking, we think that there's a little bit of a cushion there. I'd like to just get the flat 10 and lay the even juice there. And quick check in. Our guy Matt says, I would take Jalen Hurts with the sprained ankle over Mac Jones. Italian's happy to see you on there. We Sign Collectibles likes Mac Jones. And Robert's bringing up that they didn't even support Randall Cunningham. So the Eagles do have a long history.
I mean, the fan base here sucks a lot of the time. Yeah. I mean, I like the fact that they're tough and whatever, but they do act stupid. The fact that the Eagles are plus 165-ish to win this division is fascinating to me. I think it's a national bias when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys, but
right.
I don't think if you know football, I just can't see how you could say that on paper that roster's better than this one. I just don't see it.
There's really only one position where you would say, you could argue, hey, Dak's a lot better than Jalen. Just going off.
Is he a lot better though? Like, is he that much better? Like, Dak has his spots where, he does throw for 500 yards, but we've also seen Dak just blow it up in games.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? So, to me, almost Hurts is more of a gamer, where Dak is more of a fantasy guy, where Dak's going to give me my yards. He's going to, move the ball around properly. But I think we're pretty much close to the ceiling on Dak. I don't see him getting that much better. I think he is what he is at this point, right? Which is a solid quarterback that's a really good team leader, and he's a good locker room guy too. Another one, give him probably a little extra money, but when it's a guy like that who's the hardest worker on the team, I think it's easier to swallow than paying a guy like Kyler Murray. So,
I mean, I'm just gonna say here, like I like CeeDee Lamb a lot. They need to get Gallup back. Obviously, that's a big thing. I think their offense will be fine. They'll move the ball, but it'll be a fun back and forth. I think it'll be a great division battle between the Eagles and Cowboys. I hope some of those late games are meaningful, because last couple of years they haven't been. It seems like, so hopefully they are this year.
All right, let's talk about the Washington.
Before we go into that, I had a couple fun props on Philly.
Jump in.
Because I think this team posts like 12 wins. If you look at their schedule, that over 9.5 is definitely a look. Because even if you have them splitting with Dallas, losing the New Orleans, Green Bay, and the Minnesota game, they still get you to 10 wins. So they still cover that 9.5. Mind you, they start winning some of those games I penciled them in to lose. This team's going to be in contention for the 1 seed in the NFC. They're 25-1 to have the best record in the NFL, and 16-1 to lead the NFC as the 1 seed. I think both of those are better bets than betting, say, Hurts to win MVP at 20-1, because I think those two have better paths than him winning the MVP.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. So let's talk about the Washington Commanders. They've set their win total at 8. Under's getting steamed, and I can see why. And of course, Tyler, you're going to break down the schedule game by game, but this has been a bad organization for a while. Ownership is definitely the biggest competitive advantage in the NBA, and also a pretty big deal in the NFL. And we can, I don't think it's an argument. I say Daniel Snyder is one of the worst owners in professional sports. I don't think I'm going to get any sort of argument. Ron Rivera is a good coach, but every single year, this game changes, right? And he's kind of an old guy, and I understand why they brought him in, because he actually brings some professionalism and some discipline and some understanding of how to run a team compared to what they had. But still, when you're looking at the guys that he's going against and the way that these guys are designing offenses, even Sirianni, right? Young guy with a lot of energy there. I gotta wonder about Ron Rivera. I'm a big Jack Del Rio guy. He's a Northern California guy, and he did well with the Raiders, and I think he got a raw deal while he was here. But once again, the game is changing. Jack Del Rio grew up when you're the middle linebacker and you stop the run and you do your job. I mean, that's not the way the NFL is played anymore. Not a guy that I've been big on, right? And that's kind of one that we've had fun victory lapping as he's kind of fallen from grace, right? Because people thought he'd do well in Indianapolis. Another thing, right? He put up great numbers. If you just looked at the numbers, looked like it was okay. You watch the games, man. It just didn't seem like he was doing enough to affect winning. It felt like he was getting his stats without really being out there. A lot of stupid interceptions as well. And like I mentioned earlier, not well liked in the locker room. From what I've read, obviously, I have never been in these locker rooms. But Jeff, what are your thoughts on the Washington Commanders? Because I'm not high on this team, and I'm ready to go under.
I actually kind of like them, to be honest.
Okay.
A lot of it comes down to Carson Wentz, though, and one thing that we've known is that he just doesn't really play full seasons. I mean, this has been a problem, all the way back to when he was at Century High School in Bismarck, North Dakota. I mean, he's had injury problems. That's one of the issues he had here. It's one of the issues he had in college. He's just a chronic injury guy. He's also a guy that I think is just a bit kind of unlikable. I don't think he's a bad guy. I just think he has this sense of like he's the guy and that's that. As far as him, though, outside of that, which, again, is the most important position, I actually really like this team. I think the offensive line is going to be better than it's been in years past. I like McLaurin a lot. I like Curtis Samuel. I think Jahan Dotson could be a really good player for them on the outside. I like Antonio Gibson. And I think defensively, you might make the case they're the best defense in this division. I think they're very good up front. Young's going to start the season on the PUP list, but I like this team a lot. But they are just a 500 team to me, and that really probably is negated just because it's likely they won't stay completely healthy. They have very little depth on the offensive line. They don't have much outside of the top receivers. Look, on paper, their starting unit offensively is good, but what happens if someone gets injured? And we know it's just not going to happen where Wentz is healthy. So, I think on paper it's a good team, a solid team. Maybe they could fringe make the playoffs as a wild card, but I'm not doing much outside of that. They'll be a good team if they're getting points, and I want them above a touchdown, but I'm not going to be betting them as favorites or anything like that.
Tyler, last year we were really high on this team, especially the defense, and when we were doing these preseason shows, and they didn't start out very good. And they were winning their battles up front. If you watch the games, they couldn't cover anybody.
We also lost the guy who we thought was going to be our quarterback, remember, Fitzpatrick, and then he went down.
Right, but I'm talking about even their defense was just giving up. At one point, it was giving up 400 yards per game. And we thought that it was going to be one of the best defensive units in the league. And when you watch the games, the front seven was doing their jobs. It was just, people were wide open on every play. What do you expect from the Commanders this year?
Yeah, I mean, just like Jeff said, I think a lot of their season rides on what Wentz is this year. Is he going to be good? Does he probably get hurt? More than likely. But, I mean, looking at their schedule, they don't have their bye week until week 14. So we're going to know what this team is before they ever get a break. And they don't have the easiest first 14 games. Mind you, they should start off the year 1-0. They play Jacksonville to start the year. Then they go to Detroit. If they're a favorite in that game, I will 100% be on Detroit in that game. Then home for Philly, at Dallas versus Tennessee. I think those are 3 losses. Maybe they steal that Tennessee game. At Chicago, they beat Chicago. But then Green Bay, Minnesota, Indianapolis, Philadelphia, those are 4 losses. And then Houston, Atlanta, Giants before the break. They could win 2 out of those 3 because Atlanta's always that weird team. They could have like this Swiss Army knife of an offense this year with a running quarterback and all these different pieces they use. But then they go into the bye week and they come out with the Giants, San Francisco, Cleveland, Dallas. Those last 3 games, I think, could be what decides if they're going to get a wild card spot or not. And those are 3 games that I wouldn't be wanting to bet against that they make the playoffs. So I think they miss it. I think they win about 6 games. But if Wentz stays healthy, I could definitely see them winning like 8 to 9. But I'm going to bank on him not being healthy. I could see him trying to make his plays like he does, the offensive line falling apart, and he gets hit a couple times and he's hurt.
When you guys say it comes down to Wentz, it makes me even more comfortable about the under 8 because I'm just not high on the guy. I mean, he's got all the physical tools, but the NFL, it's not the NBA. You're not going to get by on athleticism. You need the smarts, and at the quarterback position, you need the leadership ability. You can go ahead and be a jerk and a diva as a wide receiver. That you're going to get away with that as a quarterback. I just don't think it happens. Jeff, anything more on the Commanders before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, Carson just makes, as you alluded to, a very cogent point. I mean, he just doesn't seem to have it all there sometimes. He wants to do too much, and that leads to injuries. And it's maddening as a fan because, it's like, dude, stay in the pocket for God's sakes. I mean, stop constantly trying to do – I remember when he got injured in 2018. I mean, it was him trying to do too much and get that extra yard and score a touchdown. It's the constant, trying to be Superman and duck under stuff and do all that sort of thing. But I will say as well, that same year that they won the Super Bowl, up until his injury, Carson Wentz was the MVP in this league. It's that simple. So we hold on to the hope that if he gets what he needs, he can be that guy again. But he needs to wise up. And as you said, this just might be who he is in his career.
Yeah, that's what I think too. Tyler, any other props for this Commanders team?
The only other thing I was looking at, they have division positions where they would finish. Mm-hmm. I don't think this team can win the division unless like something miraculous happens. And I think those top 2 teams in the NFC East are pretty much set in stone unless Dallas or Philly gets ravaged with injuries. It's just which order you want to put them in. Washington to finish 3rd or 4th is 2-1 or plus 225 in that division. I think if you wanted to bet on Washington, that's the way to do it because I don't see them finishing. Go ahead.
If I were, let's say I had $50 million or more in the bank, I would have no issue betting 100,000 on that prop. That's a very strong play because I think, as you said, I really don't care if it finishes 1 or 2. I just don't see any situation where Washington wins this division and they're 3rd or 4th. Now, I think if there was an ability for me to pick them 3rd, I would bet that as well, just because. Oh
no, there is just straight up 3rd is 2-1, 4th is plus 225.
I mean, I think that to me that's strong. I mean that if I'm getting plus money and I'm getting 2-1 on that, I think that's a strong play.
Yeah, I like that one, Tyler. And one of the reasons I like it is the next team that we're going to talk about, the final team in the NFC East, the New York Giants. BetOnline has their win total set at 7, minus 125 to the over, under 7 here, minus 105. Another team that I'm not really high on here. Now they add Brian Daboll, and this is going to be a great, let's figure out how much of that was Josh Allen and how much was Daboll's development, because he's got another project, a guy that I think, right? You look at him, he's got the NFL skills. I think when I was a kid, he would definitely be more of the NFL type prospect. But in this new NFL, if you don't get things done, they're going to move on from you pretty quick. And I think this is Daniel Jones' kind of make it or break it year here. So they got Daboll there as the coach. They lost Graham to us. Patrick Graham goes to the Raiders. And I thought he did an excellent job with that defense because I thought that their roster defensively wasn't that good, but they managed to put forth a good defensive effort every week. They have good receivers. So it's, Daniel Jones has got there. Barkley, who knows what's going to happen there. He's put some great highlights on the field, but is another guy who can't stay healthy. And you look at him and you would never think this guy's going to have problems with injuries, right? I mean, it looks like he's sculpted out of a Greek statue here. Jeff, am I overlooking these New York Giants?
No. In fact, I thought their win total 7.5 under was a strong win total. I don't really play win totals. I don't really understand why you play them, especially if you're liking a lot of these teams to win divisions, just because you're tying your money up for 6 months or so. But that being said, I mean, to think that they're a 500 team, I thought was a little bullish. I don't see it. I mean, they have a first-year coach who, look, I like Daboll. It's finally a good hire by them, but I don't think it's going to come right away. Is Mike Kafka a guy that could actually be an offensive coordinator? I know he worked under Andy Reid out in Kansas City, but we'll see, I guess. I think offensively, if Daniel Jones can just be an average quarterback, I think they'll be okay. I think their offensive line is actually significantly better than it's been before. They obviously finally have some weapons to throw to. And, Saquon, we'll see if he can be a high-level back. But here's the issue they have, and it's very glaring. In fact, they have two issues. I talked to someone that I know from my past. Okay, he is a coach at the New York Giants. And he didn't come out and say it, but he didn't exactly seem too excited to talk about Daniel Jones. I'm good with reading people at this point in my life. I talk about the mafia on occasion, and I feel like I'm pretty good at understanding people and negative thoughts and things like that. How I cover the mafia and know that, I don't know, but I just do. And he didn't seem like he was very interested in talking about Daniel Jones. He also didn't seem too interested in talking about what exactly on God's green earth is this secondary. I mean, who's going to get stops in this secondary? I don't know if I see it. They better hope Leonard Williams and Kayvon Thibodeau are the future, because this defense could go from being kind of decent to just not good. I mean, and I'm not even sure they were decent last year. They're 23rd in points per game allowed. It wouldn't surprise me if they're in the bottom 3 or 4. I think this defense is going to struggle. Losing James Bradbury hurt a lot. So couple that with a bad quarterback, to me, I think they're like a 6-win team. I don't think they're a 3 or 4-win team, but I don't think they're an 8 or 9-win team either.
Yeah, Tyler, Jeff, and I agree. Not a lot to be excited about for Big Blue there. You gonna bounce back? You got some Giants that we've missed here.
Man, Spread, I was going through my notes looking for Giants notes, and there ain't many of them. It's just like when we were talking about the Jets on Monday. I mean, this team's bad. And just like Jeff said, the defense, like they were kind of decent last year. The year before that, they were pretty solid. It just seems like they're going in the wrong way. They lose Bradbury, who was probably one of their best players on defense, if not the best one. Mm-hmm. And you're still back in this team with Daniel Jones. And, like, nobody trusts Daniel Jones to win games. Barkley would be hurt by week 4. So, like, when you look at their schedule, they start at Tennessee. Like, Derrick Henry probably puts that game down their throat, and they lose that one. Versus Carolina, so they probably go 1-1. At Dallas, so they're 1-2. Chicago, 2-2, so they're showing some teams some life. But then right after that, they're 2-4 because they're at Green Bay versus Baltimore. But they could miraculously go into the bye at 4-4 because before the bye week is Jacksonville, Seattle. So both of those teams are dumpster fires. They could be 4-4. Then Houston, Detroit, Dallas, Washington, Philly, Washington, Minnesota, Indianapolis, Philly. So, I mean, I can see why their number's set at 7, but I do not trust Daniel Jones. I don't trust the other pieces on this team. I think this team could bottom out and they might shoot for like a Bryce Young, a CJ Stroud, or even that quarterback coming out of Kentucky who will go later in the first round, Will Levis. Because I don't think Daniel Jones is your answer. And I don't think you try and fight for 7 wins here and take yourself into like purgatory where you don't get a quarterback. So I would take maybe them first couple weeks by the bye week. If we're not doing like playoff numbers, I'd make sure we were getting a top 3 pick if I were the Giants.
Yeah, and we'll see how that turns out now with the tampering charge being levied on the Dolphins, right? If teams sit everyone, right, is that going to be the same style?
Well,
deal,
you
right?
Can't do it how like they were doing it in the NBA, but I think you kind of pack it in and you could just kind of tell like they're done for the season. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. When we're coming to these win total totals, it almost feels like on the Giants and the Commanders that their results against each other will almost determine it.
Yeah, that's pretty much
because
what it is.
I like under on both, but I feel like, if one team sweeps the other, that team could go over. Do you got anything else for us on the New York Giants, Jeff? To be honest, I'm out here on the West Coast. Tyler's down in Pennsylvania. We haven't been hearing much Giants talk, so I didn't have as much prepared for this team.
Yeah, I'm not. I think the roster's pretty bad, particularly on defense. Look, I think they're decent up front, but and look, that could go a long way. But to me, again, first year coach, a quarterback that I think we all know is probably a dead duck as far as the future. Like I said, I think they're like a 6, maybe 7 win team. 7-10 looks promising. 6-11. I don't see much behind. If they win 8 games, so be it. But I don't see it, especially against the Eagles twice, Cowboys twice, and all the out of conference games or out of division games.
Yeah, they're really going to have to make sure if they want to go over that total, they're going to have to beat the Chicagos, the Jacksonvilles.
You got to win all the games you're supposed to.
But to me, right now, those are all coin flips here. So I'm liking the under. Jeff, give me your overall thoughts on the NFC East before we wrap this up.
Yeah, I think there's 2 clear-cut teams that are better than the other 2. I think it'll be a great battle between the Eagles and Cowboys, a great rivalry, which I think is one of the best in football and still always will be. It's really going to be about, I think the best quarterback is definitely Dak Prescott, but I think the best roster is the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll see if Jalen Hurts can be the guy he needs to be. I think he will. And then we'll see if the Eagles can get into the playoffs and beat a Green Bay or beat a Tampa. I think the new ushering in the NFC East is beginning, and it's going to be the Eagles kind of making that move towards the top of the NFC. I think if I could say one thing about conference winners, I think outside of the Rams and the Bucks, I think 13-1 on the Philadelphia Eagles is quite a decent spot. I'm not huge on the Packers. The Niners, I think, are in the same boat as the Eagles as far as with their young quarterback.
They might be even worse off. Jalen Hurts has NFL experience.
Right, absolutely.
What has Trey Lance done? And just a quick spoiler, reading the stuff out of camp here, he's not lighting this up in camp right now. We're not getting these glowing reports coming out of camp, and usually everything out of training camp is sunshine and rainbows.
One thing that I've always realized is, and I know it here, and I'm sure you know it, there are certain reporters, though, that and this is one of the issues we have with reporting in our country, is that we almost have guys that just don't like people, and they have these thoughts that they're just always going to be negative towards things. And I know they have that here. Jalen Hurts does it all the time. So I guess for me, like, I like talking to like the national like when I see Robert Griffin say he thinks that Jalen Hurts would be a good quarterback, I want to hear it from Robert Griffin. Whether I like him or not, he's a guy that played the game. He was out there. He's a similar type of quarterback. Hearing something like that from Robert Griffin goes a lot more to me than goofy Skip Bayless.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, and you guys have a good point about that. Grant Cohn is one of the big San Francisco 49ers beat reporters, and he has multiple players on the team that are pretty outspoken about not liking him and just having the feeling that he's just being negative for negative sake, which is funny in the Bay Area because everything else is just a cupcake. I mean, you can't find a guy that's paid to just say something bad about the Warriors or the A's or the Giants. So maybe he's trying to make his name that way. But yeah, I'd agree with that. But yeah, I would say that the Eagles are ahead of the 49ers, even though the 49ers had better results last year, assuming they go with Trey Lance, because I don't think that Jimmy G will be there. So I think that's going to be a really tough learning curve. Now, could he end up being pretty good? Probably. He's got the physical tools. But Hurts has that experience, and I think that means so much in the NFL.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I'm excited for the season. I'll be at all the home games, and it's an exciting time. The NFL is probably the one league that I still am a fan of a team. As a gambler, you get to the point where you just start to kind of, you don't really care much. It's more just about the game itself and winning. But I still have a passion for the Eagles, and I'm excited. As far as excitement, I can't say I've been more excited in a while. So I'm ready to go and can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Tyler, anything else on the NFC East before we wrap this up?
I mean, I think we pretty much touched on everything, but I do agree with what Jeff said. I think this Philly team, like, I don't think they're in that top tier with like the Rams and Tampa Bay. I don't really consider Green Bay up there, just like he said. I think Philly's right behind them. And I think like teams like Minnesota, maybe with the coaching change, like they might be in that group. but I think Philly's the strongest of them. If one of them two teams start to hiccup throughout the season, this Philly team could definitely be the 1 seed in the NFC, and you could definitely see them in the conference championship game. So I'd keep an eye on them.
All right, and that was a great segue because we will be talking about Minnesota next week, guys. So make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel. You'll be notified when we go live to break down the NFC North and AFC North next week. Jeff, once again, thanks for jumping on, man. It's been a while since we had actually talked. We had messaged here and there, but it's nice to actually talk to you again, and I know you're doing well. You had mentioned it earlier. You want to let everyone know about all the great gambling content you're doing and, of course, what's going on over at the Sit Down.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys as always. It's good to see you guys. I know, we've known each other back since the SBR days, which is a long time ago. I've got some big news that I'm going to be putting out here in the next week or so. It's obviously something that if you follow me, you probably know what I got going on. But yeah, things are going well. I never thought I'd get to the day, guys, where I'm making more money doing mafia content than I am with gambling. But here we are. It's something that I have a passion for as well. It's taken off, and it's not always easy to talk about some of the things I talk about, but people like it, and it's become something that's become something popular. So, we'll keep doing the sit down and gambling. And this is kind of the big time, though. September to May with college basketball, college football, and the NFL, it's the time where all the real gamblers come and do their thing. I'm glad to see, though, there are still good people doing good content about sports betting. This is a very watered down business, and anyone and everyone seems to be doing it now. So shout out to you guys, you folks that are still doing it. And I appreciate having me. If you ever need me to help, I'd be glad to come on again.
Yeah, we'll reach out again. Maybe we'll get you on for some of the weekly breakdowns when we're breaking down week to week. But we appreciate getting that inside info straight from a man in Philadelphia, getting the heartbeat and the pulse of the fans. And, of course, follow Jeff at Jeff Nadu. And, if you have any interest at all, you will learn so much. I thought I knew a lot about the Mafia because I'd read a lot of the books. Tony Accardo and the Five Families book, right? And you're learning something new every week, and it's really great fun. And for me, it's a great break to just listen to something and not feel like I need to memorize it for work, right? Because when I'm listening to football podcasts, I need to use that. Oh, that's a good point. Or, I want to argue about that on the show.
One thing I strive to do is always bring you something that you didn't know. So if you like a film, I'll tell you something you didn't know, or just introduce you to people that are really interesting that you didn't know about. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on. Reminder, everybody, this show is brought to you by runpuresports.com. If you're not already a member, head on over, use that promo code GETBETS to join. Perfect time to join. NFL season's kicking off. You're going to get everything from the DFS content to, of course, our betting content. And Tyler and I have some innovations on the bet side that we are working on now that we will let you know once we have them finalized. So we're really excited for this NFL and then, of course, the upcoming NBA season. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and run pure.